All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I'm your host, Coach JK McLeod, and today we are going to talk about micro decisions, those small, tiny things that will either keep you on course with your fitness and nutrition focused habits or may slightly have you drifting off course and ending up somewhere else. So before getting into that topic on today's episode, I first, as always, want to say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I know that you have no shortage of podcast content that you can consume. So I am never going to skip the opportunity to express gratitude, to say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I don't take it for granted. So if you could do me a favor, if you are listening and you're not yet subscribed to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, wherever you may be consuming this particular episode, I would greatly appreciate it if you would do that. That helps to increase the visibility of the Help Me Understand podcast. All right, so I'm going to start off today's episode, or the meat of today's episode, with a quote from Atomic Habits, which is a book by James Clear. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not. I consider it to be something that was an instant classic when it first came out. And I can't remember when it actually came out. I know it came across my feed, I'd say right around 2020-ish, because I believe that I read it when I was doing 75 Hard for the first time. So in the book, Atomic Habits, there's a portion, and I believe it's near the beginning of the book, I just looked up the quote, where he is talking about how a small change in the direction of a plane leads it to a completely different destination. So let me read this snippet, and then we will get into today's episode. All right, so he says, the impact created by change in your habits is similar to the effect of shifting the route of an airplane by just a few degrees. Imagine you're flying from Los Angeles to New York City. If a pilot leaving from LAX adjusts the heading just 3.5 degrees south, you will land in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. Such a small change is barely noticeable at takeoff. The nose of the airplane just moves a few feet. But when magnified across the entire United States, you end up hundreds of miles apart. Similarly, a slight change in your daily habits can guide your life to a very distant destination. So if I didn't lose you there, just to recap, a plane that is supposed to fly from LA on the West Coast to New York City on the East Coast, if that pilot adjusts the heading just 3.5 degrees south, instead of going from LA to New York City, they land in Washington, D.C., and that change in the nose of the airplane is barely noticeable, moving just a few feet as you continue to fly. And that particular passage is a big inspiration for what I want to talk about today. And what I want to talk about today is the importance of those micro decisions, the small, seemingly sometimes insignificant things that, from my personal experience and also experience working with people, tend to lead to slightly drifting off course. And then we will look back a few months, a few weeks, a few months later, a year later, and go, man, I just don't realize how I got here because I don't recall any sort of big, massive decision that I made. So side note, if you are someone who is immediately thinking of some very large, extreme thing that happened to you, you experienced a significant medical issue that had you, quote unquote, sidelined for a number of months, or anything along those particular lines, I hate to say this episode is not for you. And also, I got to be upfront with you. This episode is likely not for you if the first thing that you're thinking of is the most extreme year that you've ever had, or the most extreme example that you've had. And respectfully, if you want to bow out on this episode, I totally understand. What I'm talking about is those very, very common conversations that I will have with folks where we're trying to recap or recount what their routines, what their habits, what their patterns have looked like over the past even 6 months, and getting an understanding of, okay, where are your habits? The three foundational fitness habits: eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly. Like, where are you with those particular things? And very often, folks are not describing some massive event that took them off track or off course. What they're describing is one decision that led to another decision that led to another decision. So that compound effect of a small thing that then basically started to snowball rolling down the hill. And the next thing that they're kind of like, yeah, next thing I know, all of a sudden it's like I like gained 15 pounds, or all of a sudden I just stopped working out completely, and I just don't know how it happened. So that's what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about today. I think that quite often there can be this misconception that people make this massive decision to just completely quit on their health goals. And in the majority of the conversations that I will have with folks, and just from observation, I don't find that to be the case. I don't typically think that most of the folks that I'm able to interact with or get visibility to their history, they're not quitting on their health goals. I think that they are slowly sliding and drifting away from those. So they're not able to point to some big moment where they woke up on a Wednesday and said, I'm no longer going to the gym anymore. There wasn't some sort of a dramatic decision. More often than not, what it has been is just a bunch of like small choices that didn't feel really important at that time and then really started to stack up. For those of you who might be familiar with Napoleon Hill, he is the author of, I believe, probably his most popular book, which I still haven't read. His most popular book is Think and Grow Rich, I think is the title of that one. He has another book that I would put legit in my top 10. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before, of all time best self development books, and it's called Outwitting the Devil. And one of the things that he discusses in that particular book is something that he calls the drift, and someone lacking what he calls definiteness of purpose. So, not having a specific purpose. So, if you picture a boat that is traveling in the ocean, if it doesn't have a specific destination that it's going to, then it can very easily start to drift off course. Thinking about also that example that I started off with James Clear, you have that plane, even though with that one, it has a specific course that it's, or a specific destination that it's looking to get to. It's looking to go from LA directly to New York. And just by slightly drifting 3.5 degrees south, then all of a sudden it ends up in Washington, D.C. It's that drift, that just slight off course. That's what I tend to find that most folks are dealing with when it comes to answering that question for themselves. Well, how did I end up here? And it reminds me of that. I can't remember even where the audio is from that movie where it's like, "Rrr, I guess you're asking, wondering how I got here." Well, that's how we go. So let's go through some examples, again, using the three fitness foundation habits, which is eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly. So, starting off with eating well, when I think about that in terms of those micro decisions and those things that potentially can cause us to drift, I really don't believe that most of people's like unhealthy habits or nutrition problems start with cookies. It typically is that they're starting with not being specific about what they're going to focus on and what they're going to do. Typically, they're saying like, okay, I want to eat well. And also, there's no specific around that. Like, what does that actually mean to you? So, there's not some sort of intention around that. Like, for some of my folks, eat well means we get like try to get it specific. So, eat well means I'm going to make sure that I have protein, at least 3 servings of protein in a day. I'm going to make sure that I eat well. To me means that I'm getting X amount of fruits and veggies. Eat well to me means that I'm eating certain things in moderation. Like the definition is individual. And also that's the difference in not drifting, is that you have something that's intentional up front. And what I tend to see all the time is that folks want to eat well, but since they're not making that decision ahead of time, they're starting to make their first real decision to eat well when they're already hungry and they sit down to a meal or they're just stressed at the end of a workday. So at that point, when you're already starving, everything basically sounds reasonable. So, from my experience, eating well usually comes down to one decision that you typically will make early enough for it to matter when you're in the moment. Even in recent example for myself, where were we? We were somewhere at like one of my son's games or something like that. And then on the way home, it was, okay, well, let's grab some food real quick from like a fast food spot because that's the easiest thing. And prior to that, I had already made the decision out of what I was going to eat when I got home. So for myself in the eating well category, I already had a particular dinner that was planned. Would take maybe about 15-20 minutes to make when I got home. In the moment, when we're in the drive through, then there's that micro decision. There's that quick decision that's made. Am I going to decide to get something from the fast food spot, or am I going to stick with the plan that I initially had? So I made the decision because I had already, excuse me, made the decision and the promise earlier, like I've already got this whole meal that's planned at home, then I don't drift into that one decision. And this can be a somewhat of a difficult conversation to have, or a difficult conversation for some folks to really connect to, because it can very easily be translated as, oh, so you're saying I should never eat fast food. And that's definitely not what I'm saying. I'm talking about small decisions that start to add up over time. Very commonly within the coaching space, we'll say, especially in like marketing or content, will be like, it's not the one cookie that caused you to go off track. It's not the one skipped workout. So, like, what's the harm in skipping one? Well, the challenge, or where that one thing becomes problematic, is in the dose. Like, how often is that one thing being added up? So, yeah, you're right. It's not the one skipped workout that's an issue. It's that you've been saying, well, it doesn't matter if I skip one workout. You've been saying that for 5 workouts in a row. So, yeah, it is actually a problem at this point. So, I strongly recommend the next time that you're thinking to yourself, well, once won't matter, remind yourself, how often or how frequently have I said this one time won't hurt within the last month, let's say. So really think about that, because none of these decisions are made in isolation. So that's that 1 degree course correction, that 1 degree move that potentially, is that just a slight shift, or are we starting to just like all of a sudden really turn in a different direction? So that was like the eat well. If we think about the sleep enough example, people, again, it's about being able to make a decision in advance. So when you wake up in the morning, by about 9 or 10 a.m., do you have a general idea of when you plan to get in the bed that night? If you don't, then it becomes really easy to slowly but surely check like one more email. Let me watch one more episode. Let me kind of scroll, like do the thumb scroll one more time. It's usually not one. It's like what's the show, like Price is Right, where it's just like you get 2 spins of the wheel. Like that's usually where it is. It's not like one more scroll. Usually with scrolling, it's like 10 to 15 more, probably. So in the moment, that one email that you check, the one episode that you watch, the one more minute that you scroll, it doesn't feel like it's a problem. It doesn't feel like it's reckless. The challenge becomes, and again, where it becomes problematic, is if you take all of those decisions together and really add them up, they will slowly start to shift off course. So it's not like you don't lose your sleep all of a sudden, like all at once. It's almost like a very, very slow leak that tends to just drip, drip, drip. And then after a while, you're like, how did this puddle get here? So just kind of thinking through some different analogies and some ways to kind of think about this. And then the last one that I kind of jotted down with the exercise regularly. So eat well, sleep enough, exercise regularly. Again, in my experience, Very, very few people wake up and just make the decision to completely stop exercising. What tends to happen is they start negotiating. Kobe Bryant has this talk that he did one time, and he was being asked about his consistency, and different people have kind of different opinions because I mean the dude, and by all reports, was like downright ruthless with his consistency and borderline obsession and not letting anything get in his way. And one of the things that he talks about, it's an audio that I really dig every time I listen to, and sometimes I like it for a little bit of motivation. Is he talks about, like, I don't negotiate with myself. I'm not negotiating with myself. When I can hear that I'm negotiating with myself with a, yeah, you can go ahead and skip this one, or you don't really need to finish those last few reps. You don't really need to go to that practice, that sort of a thing. He reminds himself, I'm not negotiating with myself. So I believe that what starts to happen with starting to go a bit off that course with exercising regularly is people start negotiating. Going to the gym turns into like this, the intrusive thoughts when every workout starts to turn into a conversation with like, do I have time? Is this really even worth it today? It's no biggie. I'll push it to a different day. I'll just make it up later. And we're convincing ourselves that we're not quitting. And in that moment, we may not be making a final decision to quit. We are, however, either making a deposit or we are making a withdrawal in that self commitment, that self accountability, that self responsibility bank account. So once exercise stops being really a default, you start to realize that that drift is really starting to happen. So let's just kind of zoom out and really pull it all together. We're talking about just the small micro habits, the micro decisions that you make. I really want to challenge you to take a look and get curious and get some awareness around the little micro decisions that you make. Even you don't even need to do this for a week. Legit, over the next 3 days, pull out your phone and create a notes file and call it micro decisions. And when you find yourself making a decision, so I talked about the example of deciding, nah, not going to grab anything here now at the drive-through. Instead, I'm going to stick with the meal I have at home. I would jot that down, as that was a micro decision. Something that I sent in my accountability chat with a couple of friends that I've got was when I was at the grocery store. After doing my workout, went to the grocery store, and my son really loves these certain donuts from one of the grocery stores that we have here in town. So I was grocery shopping, and I was like, it's early enough. I'll go ahead and grab him this donut. As I'm grabbing him that particular donut, then I see they've got like a whole layout of like all sorts of cool flavors and cereal top donuts and the fruity pebbles and whatnot. And I'm a sucker for like cereal donuts. Like that's just like my thing. And in that moment, it would have been super easy to just be like, yeah, let me snag one of those too. And then I remembered, I don't really, it's not really my thing right now. It's not something I'm super craving right now. I don't need it. I was just going to get one because it was there and it was in front of me and I was already getting one for my son. I skipped that. So I jotted that down. Like that was a micro decision. And again, I do realize, even based on like real feedback that I've received or real comments that I've received from others before, that some folks will view this as, wow, that's being really nitpicky or that's being really strict. And you are so welcome to have that particular point of view, that particular perspective, and that particular opinion. So my purpose here is to share my perspective and a tip that may potentially be helpful for you. If you're unsure like how to necessarily apply that, you can certainly reach out to me. I'm going to do my best to try and give you some additional questions to ask yourself with how to apply this for yourself in a way that's safe for you. And also, for me, it's not about constant restriction 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. That's not my purpose. My purpose, when I talk about things like skipping the donut because there's food at home, or skipping the drive-through because there's food at home, or deciding to go with one slice of, or two slices of pizza instead of six. My point and my purpose with sharing things like that is to be able to walk people through how these micro decisions that you make can make a massive difference in the end. Because again, more often than not, the reality of the situation that I tend to see with folks is that they don't make these massive decisions to, well, think about the plane. They didn't decide, instead of going from LA to New York, we're going to go to DC. What they do is slightly change the nose of the plane, and then it drifts. And then all of a sudden you wonder how you got there. I don't find very often, again, that folks decide, I'm no longer going to go to the gym. It's just one day adds up to two. Then the second session you miss adds up to the third. And then that's where we get into the next thing you know, snap, how did I end up here? So again, action step that I'll leave you with is to open up a file in your notes and be honest with yourself. If you do this for 3 days, you might be really surprised with how many of these micro decisions there are, whether it has to do with eating well, sleeping enough, exercising regularly, or it has to do with other aspects of your life. If you're someone who has specific financial goals and it's those micro decisions that you make, well, instead of getting a coffee, like that was $8. That, I don't even know what coffee costs these days, but I'm going to assume like $8 or so. You decided not to get that. Those are those little micro decisions. Also, on the flip side, when you're jotting down these micro decisions, don't just jot down the micro decisions where you made the decision that was a deposit in your commitment bank account. Write down the micro decisions that were withdrawals. Also, like, keep it 100, keep it real with yourself so that you can start to get an understanding of where are my decisions drifting towards? Are they drifting in a way that, still keeps me somewhat in the lanes that I need to be in? Or am I drifting to where all of a sudden I end up on the shoulder, on the side of the road and just hit the guardrail? So just something to think about there. Wanted to bring that to you. I know it's a bit of a different feel from the typical Tuesday episodes. Usually on Tuesday, I'm talking about something more like much more specific, maybe even a study or anything like that. It's just, this was very front of mind for me recently today. So that's what I wanted to take some time to share. If this was helpful, if this was useful, if this is something that you are taking action on, I would love to hear how that's working out for you. So shoot me a message on Instagram at Coach JK McLeod. That's MCLEOD. Or you can email me, jk@jkmcleod.com. If you are interested in getting on my weekly email list, you can also reach me at either of those two spots, and I'll get you added to the email list. I'm actually right now, we are emailing 3 times a week to give you some tips, some free tips with the Discipline by Design series. So I go a bit more in depth, and I'm giving you free, actionable ways that you can design your environment to help promote the habits that you are looking to build, maintain, or elevate over the rest of your life. So if you're interested in that, if you're listening in real time around mid-December 2025, shoot me an email. I'm currently working on exporting all of my email subscribers over to a different CRM. So bear with me while I'm still redoing the sign up link, but you can shoot me an email and I will get you manually added. All right. If you have listened this long, thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate it. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time.